Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. Today I'll recap a political, satire, comedy film called The Death of Stalin. Spoilers incoming. For 20 years, the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, NKVD in the Soviet Union, was the most oppressive ministry under dictator Joseph Stalin. Their special forces executed or exiled anyone against the Soviet Union leader. On a blissful evening in 1953, Radio Moscow is airing a beautiful live recital of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 23 performed by the pianist Maria Veniaminovna Udina. At the sound booth, director Andreev is requested to call Stalin from Kuntsevo dacha in 17 minutes. The director panics, not knowing what will happen if he doesn't do what he is told. Simultaneously, Stalin briefly checks a list of people he wants dead before passing it on to the NKVD head, Lavrentiy Beria. The NKVD forces are then ordered to roam the streets of Moscow and eliminate all the persons of interest. Later, by 10:27 p.m., Andreev calls Stalin, who demands a concert recording. Realizing that they have not been recording the recital in the first place, the director and sound engineers hurriedly have the orchestra perform again, asking the audience to stay in their seats and applaud by the end of the performance. At the banquet hall of the dictator's villa, the Central Committee members enjoy playful banter and pranks as Stalin hosts their dinner party. With everything all set at the concert hall, the director is shocked when Maria expresses hesitance in playing the tune once more. She stands her ground even with the threat of death, but she gives in when Andreev promises to pay 20,000 rubles. Unfortunately, due to some anxiety, the conductor faints, leading them to search for a new conductor. They find a replacement somewhere in town and take him even if he is wearing pajamas. The man, Boris, is somewhat relieved as he initially feared for his life, knowing a mass raid has been going on in the past hour. Meanwhile, the committee members leave in high spirits after the dinner party. Before heading to their respective vehicles, Beria tells Deputy Georgy Malenkov and First Secretary Nikita Khrushchev this moment is the final time they will see Foreign Secretary Vyacheslav Molotov since he is on the list of people to be executed. Later, the repeated recital is successfully recorded, so Andreev hurriedly encases the recording and proceeds directly to the NKVD officials waiting by the lobby. As he is about to hand it over to them, Maria appears and hides a note for Stalin in the record sleeve, despite the director's protest. After the record arrives late, Stalin plays it on his gramophone while finding the message that details Maria's disgust over him and her hope for his death. Seemingly, her wish comes through as the dictator laughs hysterically, leading him to suffer a stroke. Fearing a brutal punishment if they move their post, Stalin's guards do not enter his office despite hearing a loud thud. As morning approaches, the maid is the first to discover him unconscious after bringing a pot of tea inside the office. Every committee head is informed, and they head to Stalin's mansion. As Article 17.2 of the law points out, the Central Committee must gather and take over while the Soviet Union leader is incapacitated. Beria is the first to arrive and finds Maria's note. The devious head takes advantage of the office by pulling out some sensitive documents, burning one of them while handing the rest to a guard to look after. Malenkov arrives and grows distraught seeing their leader not moving. Beria reminds him that as acting general secretary, he must serve as their leader temporarily while a successor is to be decided. Khrushchev comes in, albeit unprepared, wearing a suit over pajamas, and looks confused about why a doctor has not yet been able to check on Stalin. Eventually, the rest of the committee, including Lazar Kaganovich, Anastas Mikoyan, and Nikolai Bulganin, arrive. They collectively decide to carry the unconscious dictator out of the room and onto his bed. Once in the bedroom, they brainstorm on their next course of action. It turns out that the best doctors in Moscow are either dead or incarcerated as they feared they would harm Stalin instead of helping him. Ultimately, they plan to send for a team of doctors with the help of a female officer, Lydia Timoshuk. As everyone leaves, Beria whispers to Stalin to have a nice sleep while he takes over. The committee members immediately summon Stalin's children, Svetlana and her alcoholic brother, Vasily, the latter in the middle of instructing players at a hockey game. Khrushchev and Beria know that Svetlana is favorable to the people, so getting an endorsement from her to be the next leader is crucial. After the doctors are rounded up, they gather in the dacha and deduce Stalin's condition as cerebral hemorrhage, wherein the right side of his body is paralyzed, so there is no chance he will recover. Svetlana is furious, demanding a second opinion from another set of doctors, though none are left. Beria gets on the phone immediately and orders NKVD to change the purge lists, exclude Molotov from the death sentence and fill the Red Army-held control points across Moscow to close the city. Meanwhile, as Khrushchev tries to look for liquor, he comforts Svetlana while also letting her know he will protect her and Vasily so that he will get favored to become the next leader. Just then, Stalin awakens from his bed, though experiencing a period of terminal lucidity as he struggles to speak but points at a painting that they misinterpret as a request for milk. Beria leaves disappointed but becomes relieved when he is informed that Stalin died just seconds later. Stalin's body is quickly brought to the morgue, where some men cut off his skull and pull out his brain to be preserved. This is done in full view of the committee members, who look disgusted by the operation. Suddenly, Vasily comes in and becomes outraged over his father's death that he starts shooting the place, only to be calmed down by his sister. As they send the young man out, he tries to grab the NKVD officer's gun. Hilariously, everyone watches Vasily awkwardly struggle to pull the gun away before they break up the fight. Later, Stalin's corpse is placed inside a coffin and loaded in a truck to be transported to Moscow while the committee members follow closely behind with their vehicles. Almost immediately, NKVD forces arrive to loot the dacha for all Stalin's possessions while also retrieving all the workers and executing the guards. During a period of mourning, Beria releases Molotov's wife, Polina Zemchuzina, from prison. Meanwhile, Khrushchev climbs up a flight of stairs to see Molotov in his apartment. After curing his nausea, he tries to secure the foreign minister's allegiance but fails due to his dislike of factionalism. Beria arrives moments later to deliver Polina to her husband. Following this, he frees a young girl who worked for Stalin back to her parents. Sometime later, Malenkov prepares to assume the role of Stalin as general secretary. He is being photographed in Moscow when Beria comes over to check on him over some reforms. He also suggests posing with the same girl Stalin associated with in a widely publicized photograph to show some sort of succession. Malenkov agrees with everything as he does not realize he is essentially a puppet of Beria. Later, the committee members convene in a chamber and vote on their new roles, with Malenkov now chairman. After relegating Khrushchev to spearhead the funeral preparations for Stalin, Beria proposes to stop deportations, release political prisoners, and suspend recent arrests. Everyone eventually agrees, even as Molotov prolongs the debate by declaring his love for Stalin and his political beliefs. Despite this, Khrushchev starts to become suspicious of Beria's apparent hijacking of his proposals. Some days later, a lavish funeral is set up, with rows of flowers perched on every corner, pictures of Stalin hung up on the walls, and a bust of the former leader in full view of the crowd. Meanwhile, the body of Stalin inside the casket is being prepared by Khrushchev, already feeling pressured with time running out. Malenkov and Beria arrive shortly to check the progress of the funeral. A few little girls line up for the general secretary as alternatives for the photo shoot, but Malenkov insists they need to find the girl Stalin was with. Maria, scheduled to play at the funeral, also comes over to see Stalin's dead body up close, as she feels relieved and upset simultaneously. Just then, Field Marshal Georgy Zhukov arrives and furiously confronts the committee members over the supplanting of the military by the NKVD. Knowing the discussion may not go well, Maria excuses to leave, but Beria sees her off while informing her about the note she left Stalin. Malenkov reasons to Zhukov that it was his call to make to reinforce the city's security. Unfortunately, the field marshal, along with Khrushchev, became infuriated upon discovering that Beria had halted all transportation into Moscow since every citizen of Russia has the right to travel and see him laid to rest. With the Hall of Columns now open for the general public, many lines up to grieve and look at the former leader inside his casket. Above the balcony, Beria and Svetlana reminisce about old times as the latter requests the release of a friend, Alexei Kepler. Hours pass as more people flood the entrance to the hall, hoping to catch a glimpse of Stalin while offering uniquely shaped flower arrangements. Mikoyan is annoyed by this, as he is allergic to pollen. The Catholic bishops soon arrive, much to the committee members' disdain. However, they did not know that Beria lifted all the clerical restrictions, which allowed the Catholic Church to pay its respects. Suddenly, the procession is disrupted by a raucous upstairs caused by Vasily. He forces himself inside a room filled with foreign dignitaries and spreads his belief that Stalin's brain was sent to America by traitors of the Soviet Union. The committee members intervene and take him down as he yells uncontrollably. Zhukov shows his disappointment to his Red Army officer by punching him in the stomach. Svetlana appears and castigates the committee for letting her brother get hurt. Vasily insists on delivering a speech at his father's funeral, much to everyone's disapproval. Still, Khrushchev squeezes him into the schedule, hoping he will only say a few words. Later, he confronts Beria over his scheming and usurping of power. However, the NKVD head reveals to him Maria's note to Stalin and threatens to release it to the public to shame the pianist, who is well acquainted with Khrushchev. As Beria leaves, the first secretary instructs NKVD to lift the travel ban, allowing other citizens to come over. Around 1,500 mourners march on the city streets by nightfall to see Stalin. The patrol officers are surprised by their arrival that they execute them for their defiance. Meanwhile, Khrushchev angrily confronts Maria about the note, which she comes clean, though her reason for sending it to Stalin was to avenge her murdered family and friends. Attempting to do some damage control, he talks to Zhukov, proposing to blame Beria for the evening's massacre, ultimately planning the first stage of a coup attempt, hoping the committee will unanimously support it. Later, Beria reports the incident to Malenkov and criticizes Khrushchev for undermining him. As tensions flare up, the NKVD head realizes he might be made culpable anyway and demands everyone to show him respect and recognize his authority unless they want their secret involvement in various purges to be exposed. The committee decides to blame junior NKVD officers, with Beria nominating a few names in time for the funeral. Later, Malenkov stands out on the balcony and waves at the crowd with a little girl dressed like the one in Stalin's photograph. The following morning, Molotov secretly meets with Khrushchev and Kaganovich, looking disillusioned by Beria's lifting of the church ban and Polina's pardon. He fully supports the coup as long as everyone is on board. In a hotel room, Vasily prepares his terrible speech with his sister. Beria comes over and sadly tells Svetlana that her friend died from an escape attempt years ago. Seeing her distraught, he promises to keep her and Vasily under his protection so they do not get further implicated in any of Stalin's wrongdoings. On the funeral day, the committee members carry Stalin's casket to be transported to the burial site. Khrushchev quietly lies to Zhukov and Molotov about securing the rest of the committee's support. With that confirmation, the Red Army proceeds to reclaim all of its posts with Leonid Brezhnev's assistance. Meanwhile, the funeral goes well as every member speaks highly of Stalin as their final tribute to the dictator. Afterward, the committee members reconvene in the chamber to discuss Beria's usurpation of power, declaring it a wanton breach of protocol. As Beria tries to get help, Khrushchev pushes the button under Malenkov's seat and summons Zhukov and the Red Army inside to initiate the coup. The field marshal punches Beria and strips off his belt and hidden knife on his ankle before taking him away to be incarcerated. The Red Army then begin mass arresting all NKVD officers. Though initially wanting a fair trade for his comrade, Malenkov reluctantly signs Beria's death warrant after Khrushchev pleads with him to exercise his power and punish the NKVD leader for his crimes. At a makeshift trial inside a storage area, Khrushchev accuses Beria of many crimes, including 347 counts of sexual assault, pedophilia, and treason. Various officials and military officers watch as the NKVD leader is sentenced to death. Though Beria begs for mercy, he is dragged outside when a soldier prematurely shoots him in the head. With the sentencing unexpectedly over, Zhukov lets officers cremate him with a gasoline fire. Khrushchev then meets with Svetlana and gives her a ticket to Vienna, despite not wanting to leave while her brother remains in Moscow. He then confides with Kaganovich about Malenkov being unfit to lead. Shortly after Beria's execution, the Central Committee took over the Soviet Union altogether. In the wake of the removal of Malenkov and Molotov, Khrushchev became head and commander-in-chief of the Soviet Union in 1956. Sometime later, Maria performs Concerto No. 23 again, with the current leader Khrushchev in attendance. Unbeknownst to him, his eventual successor, General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev, snidely looks at him from the row of seats above while enjoying the performance. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.